Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video I'll be doing the Mid Pricer Madness Midfield edition, going through all of the players sort of in the midfield that are mid prices. This probably will be a longer video as their midfield is usually stacked with a lot of players, so I'll try and quickly go through a lot of the guys that are just going to be around about the mark, some regression candidates, etc. Just quickly go through them as they are not going to be as valuable, and then we have obviously the more valuable guys that I think are starters that could legitimately be top 6 or something like that, or top 10 sort of guys, and then you have the value picks as well. But before we get into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into the video. So as you can see here, I have the mid prices, and we stopped sort of at that Carl Amon range and De Goey sort of range. De Goey won't be, if I didn't mention it, won't be any sort of candidate for anything. We've seen him, this is sort of his full-time role, or what he's going to put up in a full-time midfield role, 87 to 95, somewhere around there. So he's not going to be value, especially with the early buy. Shea Bolton forward. Warple is a midfielder, and with that stacked Hawthorn midfield, I don't expect him to do anything more, so I'm not thinking about him. Scott was someone that I thought about with that midfield, with that, is it a wing role, I want to say? If we go to DFS and we go to CBAs for North Melbourne, I think you'll find that Bailey Scott was not in the rotation as much. If we go here, where's Scott? Yeah, 1%. So that would indicate a wing role if he's only a midfielder, and he's had 1%, and he's been played 23 games. So there's that for Bailey Scott. Brayshaw, we talked about in the I think it was the premium defenders. That just shows you the difference there. Nick Martin, a midfielder, and you'll see he's actually currently in the side, and that sort of doesn't make sense for a lot of you guys. The reason behind that is he is on, it seems like kick-out duty for Essendon, and with them, I think we've seen with, if we go quickly up to, where is he, Redmond, and we go to defenders, you'll see Redmond is 86. I think that Nick Martin could easily go 100, 105 in that sort of defender role, and it is sort of a throw-up between him or Amon at the moment. For that M6, so there is, so Amon is actually coming back into the fold, and that is because with the way it works at the moment, for me at least, if we just quickly get these prices back down, even though I said just a couple of days ago that Amon was not someone that I'd necessarily go for at the moment, I can't really get to the value, the extreme value guys, like a Walsh or something like that, without sacrificing a lot in the backline, a lot of value in the backline. So Amon and Nick Martin are sort of that block that I'm looking at the moment and sort of debating over. So they're two guys, and I'm just trying to factor in how much is Martin going to improve, and how much of his time was actually spent if we go to his AFL and sort of see what does he actually get on a wing role versus what does he get in a forward line. Because if his wing role is already like a 90 or something like that, there's already a lot more value with Nick Martin than there is with Amon, because Amon's only was inflated from like an 80 or so, as a sort of half. Here, if we go here and we look at his majority of wingman here throughout this whole time, he does have this weird 32 game against GWS. That was just a really weird game. But if we look here, he was sort of a half-backish type game. Which doesn't actually probably prove that much. But you can just see here, if we now look at sort of Amon, and then we discount the backline games, and then we look at this as well, you'll see that if we discount the backline games, because I think they'll do similar in the backline, if we look at that, and then you'll see that Amon was a 76 scorer, so his score's already bumped up by 10 from moving to the backline, whereas Nick Martin's isn't bumped up at all. So I think, and also we've heard that Amon is training some part of it in the backline, some part of it in the wing role. I'd much rather have a guy like Nick Martin who has the better floor, in my opinion, might have a worse ceiling, but has a better floor, and also I think that Amon's stats here in the back line, if we go to it, when we actually move to it, yes, he averages 112. I think that is a little bit overinflated in the marks category, especially here. Look at those marks. He had, what's that, 22, 36. He was having 12 a game. That is unsustainable as a backline. There's no one in the comp that's going to go 12 a game for that stretch. And if you even look at that, he's had 36, 43, 47, 53 across 6 games. That's almost 9 a game. That's on the verge of being unsustainable as well in itself. So I would say that Amon is probably going to be a sort of 100 guy or 95 to 100 guy, and I think Nick Martin will be the same, if not more, in the Essendon backline as well. So that's my reasoning behind those two being in the same block and currently owning Nick Martin as well. And Nick Martin probably has the juice. I would say that I just want to see the matchups there. They have each other in round 1, which will be interesting. But we'll see. I think they're very, very similar off the halfback in itself. Anyway, so that'll be one that probably flips back and forth between the two. But I think Nick Martin's the one that I'll have at the moment. Zorko, too old, and he's a mid-forward anyway, so we can talk about him in the forward line, and I think we did. Guthrie, probably a value, but is getting old, and I'd rather go for a guy off the halfback than sort of Guthrie at the moment, because I think Guthrie at most has about 10 points of upside, whereas I think Nick Martin could go 105, 110. Mills, he's injured. Smith injured. Lions has the early bye, no thank you. Jack Crisp, early bye, no thank you anyway. Ashcroft is injured. Connor Nash could be interesting, but seems like he might be, if they don't pick McGuinness, I feel like he will just be their sole tagger, and a tagging role is never kind for fantasy. Blickup's getting on in age, and his role seems to just be diminishing. Crouch is another one that's interesting and could honestly fill that M6 for a lot of people. 734k, I just don't think there'll be much upside, as well as the fact that it's come out with Rochelle and Pedler and Rankin are all going to spend a lot more time in the midfield. So I think we're starting to see that maybe Crouch doesn't even play, or if he does play, then we'll see some him struggle to get the CBAs needed to, I think, get that average that we need from him. Brody barely even plays. Hopper is injury and also has the early bye. Atkins, Dangerfield. Atkins could be interesting. Had that massive stint at the end of last year. 721k. I just don't think there's. I don't think he's the one that takes the leap. I think there's a lot of other guys that can, because he'd basically have to take the leap up to 100 or so. Dangerfield, too old. Rowbottom, early bye, and is really just the glue in the Swans midfield and isn't really the fantasy relevant. Taron Thomas, there's a lot of off-field stuff. Hunter, early bye and a wing role. Still side bottom, early bye and getting on with age. And Ollie Wines is another one that we actually need to probably talk about a little bit. And that's just because he can go 100 or so before if we go to Wines. And this, I'm not saying that he will do it, but there is a world in which he takes the CBA split. But I think it will, I honestly think Ollie Wines isn't a pick. And I think it will be midfield 3 of Rosie, Butters and Horn-Francis majority. So I think Wines could only get 40% CBAs or something like that. And you see, without CBAs, he really isn't the man. So I think he will be splitting between wing and half forward, and just this, it's just this awkward role that doesn't, and we see that Port wingers don't really tend to score that well. Yes, he averaged 77 in the regular season, 46 in finals. I just don't think his role is going to be that good, and I think he'll just have those dead games that he has had in the past. So I'm not really looking at Ollie Wines, but at 701k, if he does, if we do see him get the role over the first 2 or 3 weeks, he could be one just to jump on early, as he could be one to sort of just be that mid-pricer, but I think it's really role dependent. I don't think he gets the role. Liam Shields is 32 now. He's getting on, and he's not really in the main midfield for the Kangaroos. Willem Drew, I don't really like, because he's just going to basically be a tagger if he does play in the midfield for the Port. Liam Henry, wing role, 77. Don't really think there's much improvement possible there. Harry Morrison, don't think there's much improvement in the Hawks midfield. Was he playing? I think he's playing majority wing anyway. If we go to CBAs, you'll see that because he's a wing, mid only. If I go here and get down, we'll just get through this. CBAs, and then we go to Hawthorn. I don't think Morrison was spending too many CBAs, to be honest with you. Morrison doesn't even look like he's on the list here, which would suggest that he's a winger in that sense. Adams is a forward. Hobbs as a midfielder would need to take that leap up to 95, 100, and I think there's just more valuable options in there. Presti is injured. Holmes is sort of a creative player, not really a ball winner and not really a tackler in itself, so I don't think there's value there. Jai Simpkin, just think he's going to get kicked out of the North Melbourne rotation, to be honest. Finn Callahan, early buy, probably ruins this pick if you wanted to go for it, but I do think there will be some progression for him, but I don't know whether it will be enough. I think he could be just a guy that sort of, because like we always say, these guys are value, etc., they're going to be a pick, but I think Callahan's just going to be one of those guys that progresses every year, doesn't really have that standout year now because he's priced at 76. So I think he just goes up 10, and then the next year goes up 10, and then you'll see him as a 23-year-old just pop out at like a 95, 105 type range, and that's sort of the career he will have. So I don't really think he's a candidate to be that massive breakout that you sort of require for AFL Fantasy. But he's got a really good just career trajectory in itself. Ellis is too old and just has that early buy. O'Meara's just being kicked out of that Freo midfield. Caldwell, probably of value, but 678k would need a majority midfield role, to be honest with you, and as a forward anyway. Josh Ward, playing off the wing, could he get that time if Will Day is injured? It could be interesting, but we'd need to know that Will Day is probably out for about 6 weeks, which I don't think will happen for Josh Ward to be a pick. So that's why I think he's so low ownership, is because we don't expect Will Day to be out for 6 weeks and Ward to get the role. Kennedy, early buy, no thank you, and sort of a Mr. Fix-It player under Voss. Then you have Parfitt. He's just sort of there and thereabouts, 55 average. Don't think he will really... he's been overpriced from his last year, and that 55 average almost kicked in. But yeah, he's kicked down from probably an 80 the year before, I think, doing the math right. Sorry, it's probably 78 from the year before. And that's not this number here. It's just trying to do it's probably 77 actually, from 2022. So I just don't think as Parfitt's going to go plus 40 on his 2023 numbers, basically, which would what we need. He could have a bounce back year to 75, but it's not going to have that that 95 year. Hill is forward. Sloan is injured anyway, I think, at the moment. Plus, also looks like he's just going to get kicked out of the side. Hewitt is sort of also a Mr. Fix-It. When he has the role, he's all right, but is a massive injury concern as well. Berry could get the midfield role now that Ashcroft is out, but I suspect it will go to McCluggage. But I don't think with the early buy you can pick him anyway. Aish, winger, whatever. Wingers don't necessarily score, and doesn't look like he will be necessarily that halfback role that we want out of Freo. Swallow is getting on. Bailey's a forward. Langdon, midfielder, but he's a winger. Callum Ward's getting on in age and has the early buy. Gaff getting on in age. Jack Ross, another interesting one. He could take the leap, but has the early buy, and I think when you have those mid prices with the early, I don't really want them with the early buy, to be honest with you at the moment. But could be interesting if he pops like a 110 in round 0, and then you just go, yep, I'm going to need him just for the first sort of 3, 4, 5 rounds. Then on his buy, you trade him up to a premium, because that's sort of what you'd be looking at for the sort of Taylor Adams, the... what else? There's some other guys that are like 500k, mainly in backline, Buderick's probably going to be too early for that. Zach Williams probably too early for that. Elijah Hollins is basically suspended until his bye. Until his bye, then he comes back North Melbourne. Don't expect him to really do too much. McInerney is probably in danger his spot in general, but I think you can take some learnings from McInerney as sort of what James Jordan will do. Maybe a little bit more, maybe that 75 range for James Jordan, but I think McInerney's spot will just be directly taken over by James Jordan, and that'll be the role that you get from him. Fiorini is just a VFL, just a boss in the VFL, but doesn't do much. Tanner Bruin, I expect to take a step, but it's too risky, to be honest with you, with the Geelong midfield, as I don't think it will be a hike up in round 1 necessarily. I think it could happen midway through the year, and by then I don't think he's a value pick. Harms is just too overpriced and he's a forward. Elliot Yeo, we talked about probably in the mid prices for the defenders. Ross, I think his role is just not there. Bailey Williams, no. Sam Berry can't even get into the side. Dylan Shield can't even get into the side really for Essendon and is injury prone. Cummins, defender. Horn Francis, another one that some have said is a breakout potential, and I do see that. And it's interesting, could be there. I just don't know. Honestly, just don't know with him. So that is an interesting one to sort of look at and sort of watch. But I just don't know if Horn Francis will take that leap that he can, because he also has the potential to play half forward, and that half forward role is just not really there, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't go Horn Francis. Scholl, midfielder, winger, I think. Hunter Clark is also a sort of half-back winger type. He's sort of the utility, can play in multiple positions, and we don't like that. Zaligo had an injury scare. Don't think it's too much, but would like to see his midfield split. And I think he's one at that price that if you have like a Nick Martin or an Amon, you can, if Zaligo is going nuts, just flip to him. I do think he's one that could take... He is one that is a massive progression candidate because he's priced at 67. Needs to only jump to like a 90 across the first couple of weeks, and he could easily do that. So he's definitely one that you need to look at. Jones, winger, and he's also a defender, so talked about him probably previously. Will Phillips, another one that's interesting, could be a breakout, but I just think with Lazaro, Wardlaw, LDU, Simpkin as well, still in there to somewhat degree. And Phillips, I don't know if he gets that necessarily, because he sort of needs that number 2, number 3 midfield spot, and I don't know if he necessarily gets it, to be honest with you, because I also think McKercher will play just fraction bit in the midfield. Zach Tui, no, getting on in age. Tom Sparrow, another interesting one, but I just think he's sort of going to be one of those role players within the Melbourne side, and he has the early buy as well. Moving down to the 590 to 500 range. Dersma is a winger. No, thank you. Campbell, I think we talked about him in the defender, and I think it's next year. Same, Windhager we talked a lot about in the defender, and I think he's one that could be very, very interesting. Durham, don't see the leap, to be honest. Cottrell, forward. Boak, getting on in age. Bramble is a defender, but Ryan Barnes, just don't think it's there, to be honest with you. O'Connor, we talked about. Curtis is going to be talked about. Wardlaw is the big guy to talk about. And, this is an interesting one. And it's the matter of if we do get a playing R3, there is a massive chance that I do go Wardlaw instead of like a Nick Martin, because that's roughly 200k. Upgrade to possibly Sweet, or if Conway's there, and then upgrade Jerry up to Gawn, because Gawn, that could save you a trade or whatever. So I do think that there is value there if we get an R, and it is all about an R3, basically, Wardlaw. I do think he's one that could easily just honestly be in place of Nick Martin as well. So would like to see his preseason, and I do think he will take that number 2 role in the North Melbourne midfield, but he is certainly one that I'm looking at and I'm contemplating, because whether to go for a 750k guy in that M6 role, or whether to go Wardlaw. Had 48% CBAs, 60% time on ground, had an injury game in there. So if you take out the injury game, and he had this really weird game against Western Bulldogs where he just stunk up the place, he's already up to a 69 average. I believe he's priced at around 61 or so. Let's look at that. He's going to be priced at If you take into account Curtis's, so he's going to be priced at I think 61.2, and we've already seen him in brief 7 game span where he isn't injured. He goes at 64% time on ground, 69.7. So there's already roughly 8 points of upside there. If you were to be cheeky and take out that game, you see that jumps up to 76. And then if we look at his VFL numbers, and we were to just sort of look at these, you will see in the VFL, he does average 81, so that is a good sort of platform. And then NAB League as well, he did pretty well in his his draft year. So I'm really looking at Wardlaw and thinking he could be that number 2 midfielder in the North Melbourne midfield, only behind LDU, and is one that you could generally look at and think that he could jump up towards that sort of, he could go 90, honestly, and that would be a plus 28, 29, and that's where I think the value is. So Wardlaw is probably one that I'm going to keep an eye on for preseason. If he goes 100 in preseason, has the role, has that sort of 65, 70% CBAs, yes, you jump on him easily. Darcy Tucker, no thank you. Winger, Baker, no thank you. McIntosh, early buy, no thank you. Hugh Greenwood, sort of a Mr. Fix-It as well. Ollie Hollands, a winger with an early buy, no thank you. Ruben Jinby, another interesting one as well, alongside the likes of Wardlaw. I think he could take this massive jump as well if we go to Jinby. So these are sort of those guys, those mid prices that we are definitely looking at for a massive breakout. Yes, a lot of, and this is what I was referring to with Finn Callahan. A lot of players have young players like 18 to 23, have that sort of breakout season year on year. It's just a matter of, do they have a mini breakout of like a 5, a sort of bigger breakout of 10, or do they have this massive breakout of 20 to 30 points? And this is what we're looking at for Jinby and Wardlaw, these second-year players that maybe had some injury-affected games that make it a little bit worse for them, but then also have the chance that they go up and sort of have this massive plus 20, plus 30 rise. If we look at Jinby, he had a couple of really poor games, a couple of injury-affected games here. And if you take them out, he's averaging 61.8. If you look at Jinby, he's priced at 58. So if you take out those gains, he's priced at 61.8. If you take out these really weird non-midfield games, because I think he was just getting tired, so say sub 40% CBAs. If he goes above 40% CBAs, he's already at 69.6. So there's that as well. So I'm really think that he could improve his average up towards that 75-80 range quite easily. We saw him in the start of the season, if we discount this. We saw him in the start of the season do this for a mini patch when he just had some really absolutely crazy tackle numbers, 81.7 average across the first 3 games. He also had this crazy tackle game as well, and a 7 and an 8 here as well. So when he gets those huge tackles, you can see that his average, when he gets above 6 and above tackles, I don't think there's any other game where he has 6 tackles, he goes 75. So it's just about him getting the huge tackle numbers that he can get up to. And I think we could see a potential progression in the amount of touches he gets as he gets into that that Eagles midfield. They won't be with Hewitt. They basically have Duggan, Kelly, as well as who else in that? There's not many in that West Coast midfield. Cully is a forward, but he's injured anyway. Sheldrick, another one that we need to talk about again in the and this is one that if he goes off in round 0, there we go. Where is he? Here we go. Angus Sheldrick. He is another one that we need to talk about just because of when he gets CBA numbers, he goes really strong. If you look at when he actually gets CBA numbers, you see in this stretch here, he averaged 82 when he wasn't a sub. That is just ridiculous numbers. There's nothing more you can say about that. If we look at his VFL form, I think this is going to be around that 100 or so mark, 105 probably. No, 105 on the dot for him in the VFL in 7 games. So yeah, I'm really think that he could just jump out of the box here. What do we say? It was 82 or something like that. when he plays actual games. So that is really good. And this is sort of actually when I was thinking about, and I'm thinking about it now, he is sort of that range that I was thinking could actually, that was the CBA range I thought he could do. Generally, I thought it was 30 to 40% that he could get. And yeah, so when it's adjusted, is that 82.2? Yeah. So that's, I'm guessing adjusted means non-sub games or whatever. So 82.2, regular season, 62.4. So there's 20 points of upside there. Plus the fact he played 7 games. So he is priced at around about that 57. He's going to be priced at 56.8. So there's 26 points of upside there. Yes, if you do look at the games that he played a really sore Richmond side where he played 54% time on ground. That could go up quite easily, I think. He did play Geelong 93, did play West Coast when West Coast were absolutely horrific. Brisbane Lions, that's a really good indicator, 82 points on 55% time on ground. So if you think James Wardlaw is a time on ground sort of a points per minute beast, then or a time on ground sort of beast, then you would be then I would say that when he's not subbed, Sheldrick is sort of the best guy out there for these sort of rookies. If we look at that, he was getting mostly 1.1s. If we look at Wardlaw. Let's look at Wardlaw, and I think you'll be surprised to see that Wardlaw, if you see here, he rarely had the 1.1s. So I think Sheldrick just needs the time on ground and the CBAs to get there, whereas Wardlaw probably actually needs to take his points per minute up. So Sheldrick is one that I am massively looking at. Round 0 will probably be determinant. And it's probably going to be, I'll probably have 2 of him, Adams, and James Jordan, because you do need to trade out of them for their bye. But also the fact that in the midfield, if you actually think about it, for me, I can probably actually cover his score pretty well with just Jeremy Sharp or something like that. So it's not actually as big of an issue as the sort of forward line having multiple guys in the line, because Jeremy Sharp's probably going to burn 20 points or something like that to Sheldrick. Or 10 points to that, so it's not as bad as a forward line having like 3 or 4 guys out. So I don't actually think it's as bad if you can spread them out across the lines. Paddy Dow, I think he's injured. Johnson, he's said to be that 4th or 5th midfielder, and he does have a lot of sub games, so Johnson is one that we actually probably should look at again. So again, you see a lot of, where is he? Matthew Johnson, here we go. There is a lot of these 500 to 550 type of guys that have had a lot of sub-infected games. If we look at Johnson here, you'll see when he is non-sub affected, if we go here, and here, you'll see averages 73. He's going to be priced at 56.7. So yeah, really liking the look of Johnson here. And so yeah, I'm really liking the look of that. And then even here you can see he was injured in this game, but he did play 74%, so I think you can count that as well. 75.4 in 11 games when he really actually plays a majority of the game. And what's that, plus, what do we say, that's plus 19, so that's getting there. I just don't know if he necessarily has the role needed for him, given that he is a lower points per minute scorer than the likes of a Sheldrick and a Wardlaw. And Wardlaw has the better role. So I would sort of place him 3rd among those sort of, or 4th behind probably Jimby, among those 500 to 550k guys. But I don't necessarily mind it too bad. O'Driscoll, wing role, and I don't even know if he'll get in the side, to be honest with you. And Hoskin Elliott, midfielder, getting on in age and has the early bye, so don't really like that either. 400 to 499. Dylan Stevens, wing role, will be interesting. Don't think there's much skin on the bone there, to be honest with you, or meat on the bone, sorry. Poulter, don't really like the pick, to be honest. Wingers, don't really like the pick unless they're sort of rookie value. Fife is forward, Davies forward, Zach Jones just can't get on the park. Sardis forward. Erasmus, another interesting one with regards to Matt Johnson, but I think Matt Johnson is ahead of Erasmus at the moment, so I think he's just going to get stuck. Bonner, midfielder. Didn't they pick him? They picked him up in the preseason draft, so it will be interesting to see if he even plays. Schoenberg, don't really like it. Jordan's a forward. Jasper Fletcher, don't think he necessarily gets the role, and I think there's just a lot better value in the sort of 500 to 550k range. Piggott is forward. Archie, don't think he does too much impact. Scott's a forward. We're can't even really get on the park, to be honest. Nevitt, I think he's overpriced, to be honest with you. For a guy that's value, I think he will go up 10, 15, but I don't think he jumps that 25, 30 that you're sort of looking for. Huswaite, interesting to see what he does. 2 games, 63, going to be priced at 47 roughly. 47.5 probably. So will be interesting with him, but I don't think that he has too much upside, to be honest with you. But will be interesting. And a watch there. Hewitt injured and a forward. Harry Sharp, a winger, just can't get into the side, to be honest. Cooper Hamilton, don't think he can really break that GWS side, and he has a round 0 game, so he's got the early bye. Cook, 1 game, 63. Don't really think you should look into him too much at the moment. We'll need to do more research on him. And then Thomas and Dow. What's he going to be priced at? This is one because I don't have the markers either side for him. So 407k. I would suspect is going to be priced around about the... He's priced at 45, did 55 the last year, so can he do sort of that 75? I could do, but I don't think I really see it at the moment. Early buy as well, so one to watch as well in preseason and round 0. Then we get to the 300, 399k. We got a forward. McGuinness is a tagger, no thank you. Campbell Chester, I believe, is injured, but he has a wing role anyway, and he doesn't really seem to score that well. Nick Cox, defender anyway. Angwin, midfielder, 351k, would need to step it up, and has played 15 games, so no really discount injury there. Devon Robson, forward, but injured. Jack Carroll, midfielder, just don't think he gets a game, to be honest with you. Cooper Stevens, can't really see him getting a game, and then we got some forwards here anyway. And that pretty much rounds out the video. 31 minutes. I did think I kept that pretty short for the mid-prices. I thought it was going to be a lot longer, but we sort of got through them. And so that's the video for the Mid-Pricer Madness Midfield Edition. You get the forwards tomorrow where we talk about, I guess there's a lot of forwards that are going to be in my side. You will see a lot of yellow, and that probably starts from, I think it's around that 600k range or so. And you'll see quite a lot of sort of key forwards as well as a lot of hamstring forwards, if I put it that way. And a lot of guys that are sort of utilities as well that get chucked around the ground that aren't going to be as valuable. But anyway, that is the video, and I'll see you guys in that next video tomorrow. Bye, guys.